Hey, what's up? How y'all doing today? As y'all know, I was sick for about a week and a half. I'm feeling better now. I still have a tad bit of a cough, but I'm okay. And so we kind of put off our Thanksgiving dinner instead of having it on Thanksgiving Day because I didn't want to get anybody sick. I changed it to the following Monday, which is today. So I've been trying to get some food cooked and everything today so we can have dinner tonight. We're not having the traditional Thanksgiving. I never do traditional Thanksgiving because I do all that kind of food at Christmas time. So we're going to have some T-bone steaks, which I always try to pick something we never have or we rarely ever have. And I don't even remember was the last time we had T-bone steaks, and that's one of my husband's favorites. So T-bone steaks, we got some rolls. I've got a mashed potato recipe to show y'all that I used to make all the time years ago for Christmas when we went to my mother-in-law's house. Some deviled eggs, some fried corn, and I've got 2 desserts for y'all, and I'll show y'all those later on in the video. I think that's all. So let's get started on all this. Also, I wanted to say I'm also going to use this for my Sunday dinner video this week just because Thanksgiving's over. Y'all are probably done, you know, you're not worried about a Thanksgiving video, and it's not traditional anyway. So since this is a big family meal, I'm going to use this for my Sunday dinner video. And yes, I'm munching on bacon. Candace knows better than to bring bacon for a recipe because if there's leftovers, I'm going to eat it. Let's get into this. All right, the first thing I'm going to start on is my crust for my pie because it has to cool completely before I can actually put the other stuff in. And I always double this crust recipe just because I really love this crust, and that makes it a little thicker. But if you want to do a single, then it's 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 stick of butter, and a half a cup of pecans. But I double it, so I'll do 2 sticks of butter, 2 cups of flour, and a whole cup of pecans. And you also want to chop up your pecans almost into dust. It's really small. I'll show you how I do it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to use this tiny, I forgot what you call it. It chops up stuff. I'm going to use this and chop up my pecans. And I'm also going to put my butter in this measuring cup and melt it in the microwave. I'm not going to show this part because I got to trot all the way to the other side of the kitchen because only one side of my kitchen has plugs. And I don't want to transfer everything, so I'll be right back. I can go ahead and be getting the butter in the cup here. Okay, so I have 2 sticks of melted butter. No chips. I'm gonna do 2 cups of flour. And 1 cup of chopped pecans. I'm just going to mix all this together really good with a spoon until it comes out looking like a dough, sort of. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and pour it into this dish. Normally, you would use about a 9 by 13 dish, but this one's a little bigger than that. And that's also another reason why I'm doubling the recipe, just so we can have extra. But once you get it into this dish, you just have to pat it down into the shape of the dish. You want to cover the whole bottom from edge to edge. only make this usually for Thanksgiving and Christmas, so we always just double the recipe. I'm going to pop it in the oven. I think it's 15 to 20 minutes until the crust gets done at about 325 degrees, and then the crust has to cool completely before you can add the other stuff. I wanted to show y'all, this is the mashed potato recipe I'm making, and I used to make this all the time to take to my mother-in-law's house for Christmas and things like that. But it's been a very long time since I've made this. I've had it in my recipe binder all these years. And I wasn't sure how old the recipe was, but looking at this expiration date on this coupon, January 31st of 2010. So I probably started doing this recipe in 2009. And it's really good. So I'm fixing to cut up the potatoes. And I've already got the bacon cooking, so we can start prepping for this recipe too. And I'm going to finish that pie that I made the crust for. Also, it calls for 2 packs of cream cheese and a stick and a half of butter softened. So I've already got this setting out so it can soften. Going ahead and frying up this bacon for the potatoes. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get these steaks in the pan so I can get them in the oven, because I plan on cooking them very low and very slow in hopes that they'll turn out very tender, because I am not that good at cooking steaks. Mine usually end up being too tough or too overdone, and I'm really going to work on that this time because I spent a lot of money on these steaks and I don't want to mess them up. So I sprayed a little bit of cooking spray in the biggest baking dish that I have. It's my Rachel Ray dish, and I have 3 of these steaks. It's going to be 1 for Kendrick, 1 for Tony, 1 for me and Candace to split, because we don't eat a bunch of meat like that. And I'm going ahead and getting them open and getting them put in the pan. And after I open this one and get it in the pan, I'm starting to realize that only 2 of these gigantic T-bone steaks are going to fit in my biggest dish. So I'm going to end up having to use another dish for the 3rd one. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and get the seasonings on this one and get it ready to go in the oven. And then we'll season the 3rd steak and get it ready to go in the oven. And to season these steaks, I'm just going to add some garlic salt. I'm going to sprinkle that all over the steaks. I'm going to ground up some black pepper on the steaks. And since I didn't put any regular onion on here, I'm going to sprinkle some of this minced onion on top of the steak. Then I have this buttery steakhouse, the Kinder's brand seasoning. I don't remember if I've ever tried this before, but we're going to try it today. Candace says it's good, so I'm going to sprinkle this all over the steaks. I'm going to put quite a bit on there. Then I'm just going to kind of pat it to kind of press the seasonings into the steak the best that I can. Y'all, check out how big these steaks are. Like, even compared to my hand, they are huge. This is not something that we have every day. This is a one-time deal that I've got these steaks this big. We won't be having these again for a very long time. This is a special occasion. And I'm going to take all those same seasonings that I sprinkled on here and sprinkle them on the other side of the steak. Since they're so thick, I really thought that they needed it on both sides. So I'm going to make sure I put everything on both sides. Once the seasonings are on there and pressed in, I'm going to go ahead and add some pats of butter to each steak. I decided to go ahead and add some parsley flakes to this too, just to give it some color. Once all of that is done, I'm going to go ahead and cover this whole dish with some aluminum foil just to keep the steam and the heat in, because I am going to be cooking it so slow. I want it to be very tender. And I'm just going to bring out this other dish. It's just a square dish, just for that last steak that wouldn't fit in the other pan. And I'm going to repeat the same exact process with this steak that I did with the other ones. Three somebodies are just being lazy today. All right, since I'm doubling this recipe, I'm going to add 2 cups of powdered sugar. And then I'm also going to add 2 packs of cream cheese. Then I'm going to add 2 cups of Cool Whip, and I'm just eyeballing this. I'm mixing this with my hand mixer, and this thing is very messy. So I did move the camera back because I didn't want to splatter it there, because, I don't know, when I use a hand mixer, stuff just splatters everywhere. And Candace would have let me borrow her stand-up mixer for this, but I didn't even think about it. I'm going to get me a stand-up mixer one day very soon. And I'm just going to go ahead and clean up this counter really quickly. This is what the cream cheese layer should look like. Now I'm just going to go ahead and mix the pudding mixes, and I get 2 large boxes of pudding. And I don't use the pudding recipe. I use the pie filling recipe because that makes it a little thicker. And voila, we have chocolate pie filling. After this crust layer is completely cool, I'm just going to take this cream cheese mixture and dollop it all over the crust. That's going to be the second layer of the pie. And once I get all of it on there, I'm going to spread it out as evenly as I can.
There's a light at the end of the road that I'm aiming for. I don't see it yet,
Once that second layer is done, I'm just going to pour the pie filling onto that, and that's going to be the third layer. And I'm going to get that spread out all nice and even too. Next, I'm going to pop this into the refrigerator for a few hours so it can set and thicken up. Once that's done, I'll top it with Cool Whip, and either you can put some sprinkles or some nuts on top. Now that this bacon has cooled down, it's time to get it all crumbled up. That's going to be a topper for our mashed potato recipe. And I'm just crumbling up all the pieces of the bacon, as you can see, to set aside for later, except for one piece of bacon. I wonder what happens to that piece of bacon. Okay, so on this potato recipe that I showed y'all, it actually calls for boxed instant mashed potatoes. And I don't remember how I made it back in the day. I could have went by that just because I wanted to kind of go by the recipe. But we don't really do instant mashed potatoes. So I'm going to try to do some homemade mashed potatoes, but still mix all those ingredients in and make it the same. So we're going to see how this turns out. I ended up using about 7 of these huge baking potatoes. And at first I thought it was going to be a little too runny. But once I did the process where I bake it in the oven afterwards, it thickened up. So I think about 7 huge baking potatoes is just enough for this recipe. After I get all these cut up, I'm going to add water to the pan too, and I'm going to boil them just like you would for mashed potatoes. The steaks finally just came out of the oven. I think I cooked them between 2.5 and 3 hours. And before they were completely done, I did take the foil off. Okay, right here I'm going to go ahead and add about a stick of butter to this pan. And then I'm going to be letting that melt down. And off camera, I'm going to go ahead and cut the corn off of the cob. I know y'all have seen me do that several times. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it off camera. Candace did take the corn out of the husks for me before I cut it off the cob. Once that butter gets melted, it's time to pour the corn in the pan. And I'm just going to add some salt and some pepper. Try to feel which way to go and what is real. I wouldn't fall into my doubts anymore. While I was editing, I see that my family decided to act silly when I wasn't looking. Now this is what the kids like, is these little smokies with some barbecue sauce. So I'm just going to add those to the crock pot and go ahead and put the barbecue sauce in and just let those be cooking for a little while we're doing everything else. This was one of the hardest squeeze bottles I've ever dealt with. So I end up just opening it and dumping the barbecue sauce in. Yeah, but we're nowhere near. We don't see it yet, but we're nowhere near. Candace also did the deviled eggs and the rolls for me. So she went ahead and got the eggs boiling and got the rolls out of the package and put the aluminum foil on top. I got the potatoes drained, and I'm using the cast iron Dutch oven that used to belong to my mother-in-law to put these in because I needed something really big to hold all of this. This is something that got passed on to me when she passed away. But I already had all of my butter and all of my cream cheese cut up into little cubes. And it was 2 packs of cream cheese and I think a stick and a half of butter. I didn't have to use the water because the water would have been for the instant potatoes. And since I didn't make instant, I didn't have to put water in these. And then I had to use some garlic salt. Then next I used some onion powder.
I don't wanna waste my time, don't wanna waste my mind. I wanna get off this ride, I wanna make it right. 이미 찢어진 맘, I'm ready to go, go low, go low. 이미 오래된 말, you left me alone, alone, alone.
Then I'm gonna add some salt.
I don't hate you, but the way you just grip my heart, break my heart, 날 무너지게 해. And you might be 나는 널 위한 길일까 이젠 아까워. Oh, I never wanted us to be.
Next up is this whole 16-ounce container of sour cream.
This I never wanted to leave. All I ever wanted was to be myself. That's all I wanted. 코끼리야만 하냐고, 떠나야만 하냐고.
Okay, now comes the evaporated milk, and it did call for the whole can, but I only used about a half a can because that whole can would have been to help soak up the instant potatoes if we used instant. But since we didn't use instant, I just used about a half a can of the evaporated milk.
대답하기도 전에 아쉽지만 okay bye. 많은 날을 보내고 눈물 젖잖아. 이미 찢어진 맘, I'm ready to go, go low, go low.
This is where I was talking about where I thought the potatoes were going to turn out a little too runny. But once I baked them, they were fine. And I just topped these with some bacon crumbles and some paprika. And I baked it in the oven, I think, for about 40 or 45 minutes. All the food is done. I just want to show after I got finished with everything, the steaks, the mashed potatoes, the fried corn, the rolls, the deviled eggs. And then this is what it looks like all plated. As you can see, those steaks took up almost the whole plate. Y'all, I really meant to show y'all when I put the Cool Whip and the sprinkles on top of this dessert. And I just totally forgot. But we've ate a piece and I sent some home with Candace and Kendrick and the kids. And this is what's left for us to have tomorrow and whenever. I did not get to make that other dessert yet. That's a new one for me. So that's going to be next week's Sunday dinner recipe, just that dessert. And I hope y'all have a good one.
Alone, alone.